Evening.
Evening.
Looking different there, mate.
Uh, do
She
people
like
in
it?
your life? Sorry.
I was gonna say, does she like it?
Well, she'd made comments about wanting to know what was underneath, what was hiding under the beard, and she's out of the country at the moment, but coming back in about a week. And her comment when she saw the picture was, uh, she doesn't know what she prefers at the moment. I think it'll come
Interesting.
down to is which scratchiness is better, because it's always going to be a bit scratchy.
That's no, it's looks. You look older, you look more serious, you look more masculine.
With
I'm gonna
the
say all
beard.
three of those off the bat. No.
Oh, I've
Now.
had several comments at work that I look substantially younger without it.
No, I don't think so.
There were lots of memes on the internet I found of people shaving, and it's like big manly man with a beard, shave, and then they put a photo of a baby in the last square because
Yeah.
it's like baby
No,
face. But
I don't see that with what I'm seeing on screen.
hmm, I
For
think I've
all
got the
those
jawline to
watching and
carry it
listening,
on.
I only just seen it just now. No, it's giving you more of a sharp appearance,
Mm,
particularly with the clothing you're wearing. Whereas before everything was like, I don't know, soft and smiley.
mm.
It suits your new attempt. Attempt feels derogatory. Your new direction towards seriousness and aggression.
Mm. Yeah,
I would
it's
keep it.
interesting. I was playing with that recently because oh, I had comments from the new, hopefully permanent woman in my life, but that remains to be seen. That what was it? Something about liking the mafia look, the serious look.
Yeah, I'm not surprised by that.
Yeah, I can't help but smile when I look at her, but then it's like it's interesting to consciously bring up the more serious aspect and try and manifest that forward. Hmm.
Interesting how.
It's like turning a control that I'm not used to moving. I had been playing with a lot more in the past, or relatively recent past, but bringing it up for myself to experience is a very different thing to bringing it up to show someone else.
Hmm. Okay. I
Mm. And
feel like there's
there's
more.
it's interesting because we've talked a lot about me and internal work working towards finding a relationship before, and I'm not planning to rehash that. I'm not going to go into depth about that, but there's the naivety versus cynicism versus bravery dynamic of knowing there are lions and dragons out there and reaching out blindly, knowing you could be reaching into a lion's mouth, but
Mm,
knowing that in doing so, you might bring out the best in the lion, where if you lash out in fear that there's a lion there, then the lion will lash out in return, or lioness, as the case may be. That
mm.
by reaching out, what was it? It's the way I've found to describe it was that it's I would prefer to trust the liar than lie to the trustworthy.
Oh, that's good. I like that. It's funny that this has come up because I actually just had a massive argument about this recently.
Mm.
Um, and things got very intense with it. But it was basically along the lines of um, the person becoming into the cynical state.
Mm.
And obviously, as people in that state do, they believe it's superior to the naive. And then they look at the people who do the bravery thing, and they look at them as naive,
Mm.
as the cynical mindset likes to look down on anyone with any hope ever.
Mm.
And it's the same problem of how can you trust anyone when you know people can hurt you? And after a lot of arguing, managed to get the point across of whether they betray you or not, whether they're an evil person or not, it is still always your best course of action to offer them a hand initially upon first meeting a person.
Mm.
Obviously, if you know a person to be a betrayer, you don't go up to them. And I mean, you can, but at your own risk.
Mm. It's
There can be
sort of,
times when your spirit knows that that's the right thing to do to help someone.
yeah. It's the prisoner's dilemma writ large of we're each sort of privately in our own heads deciding whether to betray in one way or another the people we're interacting with. If both people trust, then both people win in a small way. If one trusts and one betrays, then the betrayer wins big and the trusted.
This is the game theory problem, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Whereas
Yeah.
if both betray, then both win a small amount.
Yeah. See all modern relationships. And
Mm.
because of that, each person's first choice action is something that neither of them will choose to do. No, each person's first choice action is something that neither of them really want,
Mm.
which is the no one trusts anyone, so no one gets betrayed by anyone problem.
Mm. And it's
But
you see it more in more populous nations, I think. Like the less likely you are to ever meet the person you're interacting with again, the more the more the betrayer approach is successful because you betray one person, you'll never see them again. But if you have one person who you're
in an
interacting with
individualist
repeatedly,
society, sure.
yes,
But I believe you could have a incredibly popular society who was very culturally integrated.
it takes another layer on top of the pure individuals. I've lost your audio.
The person you're interacting with isn't just an individual, but a representation of the group. Even though you may not ever see that person again, you're going to have cultural ramifications for doing so,
Mm.
rather than individual ones of whatever that person might do if you happen to see them again.
I think you lost headset connection on your audio because it cut out for a minute and now it's coming back in lower quality.
Yeah, I lost you for a second too.
Mm.
Can you hear me properly now?
I can hear you with the echo that tells me it's listening through the inbuilt speaker, not the ones on your head.
Okay. I'm going to pause for a minute while I figure out tech problems. We're on again.
Yeah, technical difficulties.
Yes, more technical difficulties. Throwback to the early days.
Yeah, but and close out where I think we were of
Oh yeah, we were doing
betraying. Yeah.
There's so much more to say on that subject.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Being the betrayer doesn't pay long term. It's the repeated games, and societies can make it work in other ways. But if we bring it down to individual interactions, if you're going to interact with someone multiple times, then the
Well,
acting
no,
has
I
failed.
think okay. I do have more to say on this. I did just have this conversation with someone else, so I would like to flesh it out a bit. I suppose it's not just about you. If you Okay, you think you can get away with it, you can't. That's not how the universe works, but
Mm.
you think you can. Your negative actions to someone will negatively affect them. You know, if you're abusive to someone, they might go home and be abusive to their wife. There's a joke about boss yells at guy, guy yells at wife, wife yells at kid, kid, kid's dog. Something like that.
Mm.
And we're networked effect beings. You ruin the day of someone, they might slightly degrade the day of like 5 other people. And all that would need to happen is that you were so bad to that first person that not only did they affect the day of someone else, but then the person that they affected the day of someone else. And then you've got 2 degrees of separation, which is the network link for our country.
Mm.
You could theoretically use that to reach any person in the nation, or every person.
Yeah, it comes down to raising or lowering the average of the society.
Yeah, do you want to make the world better or not?
Mm.
And you sit there and be cynical and snark at people, and you're going to have a negative effect on existence. Your actions are going to worsen the days of everyone that you encounter and sour them and possibly make them worse in other people's days, or do a worse job at whatever they're doing, bringing down everyone. And then the other half of that is the degree to which people treat you poorly can be, is not always, largely dependent on your behavior towards them.
Mm.
So if you come out of the gate hostile thinking everyone is evil and I need to protect myself from people, the person's immediately going to feel soured on you and not going to, they're going to respond in kind. They're not going to reciprocate with kindness.
Mm.
If you even want the chance of that, you have to come out the gate kind
Mm.
and offer the hand to people, even though they might bite you.
But I think that there's still a sort of balanced aspect to that the cynic would argue for, and I think is a valid point of making that. Like there was an example recently from that epidemic of women getting randomly punched in the face by guys in New York. That one guy did that, and a mob descended on him and
Yeah.
beat the daylights out of him. And it's like if you catch the betrayer, that is, it's worth punishing that behavior.
Well, you certainly can't allow it to thrive.
Hmm.
And it's toxic in the
Yeah.
actual sense of the word. Poisonous, spreading.
Hmm. That's not saying that individual should be shunned forever, although an individual who exhibits a ongoing pattern of toxic behavior, it's like, okay,
Yeah,
you're a
reputation.
nexus of toxicness. Like, let's push you away until you can prove that you can play the game that everyone will benefit from.
Yeah, it's like prison.
Yeah.
That's something I've been thinking a lot about in the last few days is the prison thing reminded me is that at some point in the recent history of the West, we decided that using force against people was always morally wrong.
Mm.
Like we got so individualist and libertarian that we think that every single person everywhere is in perfect right of doing whatever they want, which feels a little bit more postmodern than anything. And then because of that, we're now, it's not okay to persecute your enemies or defend yourself.
There's an element of truth in both directions, in the sense of persecuting someone you see as an enemy just because you see them as an enemy is one thing.
Well, what if they are your enemy?
What does enemy mean?
Okay, I'll make it stark. We'll go straight to communists.
Someone who wishes you harm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have a person who is living within your nation, who states publicly I hate your nation, I hate your culture, I hate your people. I will do everything in my power to destroy it.
Mm.
Is that okay? To just like, oh, that's fine. Yeah, you can hang out and come down to the coffee shop and we'll give you a bank and government ID and a job and you're happy, you're a citizen. Don't you worry, you're a citizen.
Yeah, I think that
What happened to the idea of treason?
well, the right for
Or
free speech comes in terms of if someone is having a bad day and is freshly into the country, going out and saying that shouldn't get them thrown in a gulag. But at the same time, it's like, okay, you're saying all these things. Let's just not move you forward into citizenship yet. Let's not give you more opportunities to put that into practice until you've shown that you'll be of benefit to the rest.
yeah, you hit the head on the nail on the head with the gulag thing.
Mm. I think
I'm
actions.
okay with a strong state as long as it's in line with my moral values.
Mm,
I'm not okay with a strong state that's not in line with my moral values. And at the end of the day, that doesn't make me any different from a leftist. Because they love big daddy government as long as it's theirs.
mm.
Of course, the problem is they don't realize that they'll get killed by their own government. But
This feels like it links into something you commented earlier about absolute truth or universal truth versus subjective truth.
mm,
So different people will see truth differently, different religious views, different atheistic views, and so on, will see right and wrong differently. And that leaves us, if we try and take an impartial viewpoint, that leaves us anchorless.
yes,
Like you can anchor yourself to a certain religious viewpoint, the Bible, and there's a lot of good things in there. But
no,
it's been distorted in too many ways to be stable these days.
God, that leads to a dark philosophy in the world.
There's a light somewhere. I I have confidence in that, but I can't point to it yet.
There are many different interpretations of the world. Most of them are attached with identities and groups.
Mm.
People subscribe to whichever one they effectively were indoctrinated,
Raised?
inducted, maybe
That's a better term. Yeah.
inducted into. They accept that worldview. They believe its axioms and its premises, which is why the modern left and the modern right can't communicate really.
Mm.
And I think like the women getting hit in the subway thing is like a great example. They voted for these policies, and they still do. And then the Republican-leaning people want to step in and be like, we have to protect them. And at a certain point, it's like, well, you assume that they don't want these kinds of things happening, but they've been voting for these kinds of things for 20 years and still publicly declare that it's good and that they like it. Who are you to say, no, actually, I know better than you? This comes to the moral interpretation problem. My point is, different groups have different ideal sets that give them different worldviews and shape their actions. We all think the thoughts of dead philosophers, vessels for memes. And these meme groups, these societies, we'll call them societies effectively, will act out their moral philosophy and worldview in the world. And if they can't really communicate, and there's some fringing, there's some blending on the edges, and groups who are similar may join and develop. This is how religious ideas developed. It's a network of competing organisms, effectively. which means it's going to be subject to an evolutionary process. If some groups are more successful than others, then they will outcompete them.
I feel like a lot of it gets judged by consequences of actions.
Yeah, it's consequences, but then also those consequences have to be judged through the lens of whichever group that you're in. So this is the postmodernist problem. What is objective reality?
Not something we can see.
No. The difference between what I'm trying to say and the postmodernist philosophy of no objective reality is the belief that the words that I am using are a tool to be used to pursue truth, even though we may not hold it. Whereas the postmodernist philosophy is, oh no, my words are a weapon, a tool that I can use to manipulate anyone and anything at any point in time. They don't have to mean anything. And even though they do say the truth quite a lot, which I think is quite funny, they'll generally say something and then the other half of the political spectrum will hear them and assume that they mean something that they understand because they couldn't possibly mean what they literally said. I think they do. Like the flip the pyramid is a great example. We all know how that ends up. And so do they. The idea is that the actual communists who are running around trying to bring about communist revolutions aren't stupid. They know full well that millions will die, and poverty and crime and absolute atrocity. But they don't care about that because what they want to do is take themselves from the bottom of the pile and put them on the top. And the only way to get from here to there without, skill and achievement, of which they don't have, is to do that. And we look at the death and destruction and go, how could you possibly, there's no way that you understand this. And I think that's infantilizing them. I don't believe that they're that stupid. I think they know what they're doing. Sorry, sidetracked. If you have a world full of these different groups who have competing intellectual frameworks in which they interface with reality, some will be more successful than others and some will fail of their own accord. We have probably called these countries through most of history. Some countries succeed, some countries fail. USSR is probably a good example. They grew, they had their time, and then they collapsed because their ideology framework was not long-term a successful one, even though it succeeded in the short term. Their meme flared bright and fast, but burnt itself out because it was literally burning its hosts. Given that, why would it be unjust for one group to use force and violence against another? What does unjust even mean? When you're trying to look at things at this lens outside of one group or another, what does that even mean? This feels dangerous, like I'm swimming in postmodern waters.
We need an anchor. I'm not sure. Like we're trying to think without a reference, and I think that might be impossible. We're trying to navigate without a datum.
Yeah, and that's why I said this is a dark worldview. And perhaps this is what the postmodernists are actually like inside their head. Is that I immediately came to the conclusion, like all this big rant happened in like half a second for me. And I immediately skipped over that and came to the conclusion, which was, oh, all of the groups will compete forever until such a time as one meme is so successful that it takes over all groups. Whether through violence or peaceful or otherwise.
I think
And
one of the
if a group, if the meme is successful and it works and it wins, why can you say that it is immoral? By what standards do you judge them? They use force to defend themselves or to be aggressive? That's unjust and unacceptable. Why?
I think the core assumption of every perspective-based morality is that there is some underlying structure. So it feels like the postmodernist view is like everyone's standing on perfectly smooth, perfectly uniform ice, and therefore whoever wins in the fight is the winner. But I think that various perspectives posit a slope to the ice, say a grippiness in one direction. Like there is a underlying nature to reality, and
Yes.
it's codified in various ways. But I think that we can glimpse that in practical karma, in the sense of
Ah, yes. I feel like I need to clarify what I was saying. I see where you're
mm,
going. The thing that would win in the long run is the thing that meshes most correctly with the real world.
yes,
Yeah, like in Dawkins. I really hope they have that name right, or I'm gonna feel like an idiot.
or he's the one who
Um,
invented the word or used the word meme in its modern context of
Richard
idea
Dawkins.
gene.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, wow, the fact that I confused him with who I was trying to talk about is kind of funny. Nature is that which selects.
Mm.
That's evolution. So that's reality. That which selects. And if we
Field
are going
within
to
which things
have,
compete.
yes, but also it determines the winner.
Mm.
The rules of the game are set and they don't change. All that changes is the means by which we operate.
And we're cooperating
Which,
and competing with other memes, so
yes,
they affect the effective field that we're playing on, but the field itself doesn't change.
yes.
And the memes that more accurately or more effectively interact with the field, I think the
And
field does change with
this
time.
is not
But
2D either,
mm,
because you can have a meme that works really well meshing upon a world of other memes that live underneath it. But if you cut
mm,
out the bottom ones, ideas would be a better word, but if you cut out the bottom ones, it'll fall and land on the bare ground of reality and die.
mm. There are strategies that work great in a world of enmeshed international economies and international trade.
Yep.
But they don't work well where every country's having a squabble with its neighbour.
Mm. The immediate analogy that came to mind was bare metal versus desktop.
Is that a computer term I'm not familiar with? Bare metal.
Yeah, that's bare metal is the layer of operating system that talks directly on the silicon. So
Ah,
the computation that's done right at the base level in ones and zeros.
oh, so a step below assembly or assembler.
Yeah, effectively, it's the BIOS and kernel layer right at the
Mm,
bottom. It's the foundation which on everything is built. But my point is that you can't just write code and put it on a CPU and have it work. That doesn't work. You have to interface with the analog reality of existence first, and
mm,
that is counting your transistors and doing maths on them and abstracting it out into the code base. What I'm trying to get at with all of this is that way back to Israel and Ukraine, Who By what right do we point to a culture, any culture, including our own, and criticize them for being overzealous in defending themselves? You went too far in defending your culture, your people, your meme. You felt that you needed to do this, and we believe you went too far, and that is unacceptable. Because it was your meme and not ours, is probably the answer. We're allowed to be expansionists, but you're not.
And you're in a different context to us. It's like if you're living in the hood, where there's crime and every other person has a gun, that's a very different environment. And if someone runs up to you on the street and grabs your shoulder, you'll react very differently to if you're in a relatively peaceful, polite neighborhood where you've never even seen a gun. It's like someone runs up to you on the street and grabs you on the shoulder. It's like, what? What's wrong?
Yeah,
And
like if it happened in a gated community, you'd be like, is there an emergency? Like, is everyone okay? Or is in the other one, you're like, fuck, I'm gonna die.
Yeah, and you'd probably lash out instantly.
Yeah, or freeze.
Yeah. Yeah, for someone who's nervous, say someone who knows that there are people who want to hurt them, sees someone running up to them and they'll be wanting to go for a gun, then that person reaches out for them and then bang. And like, even if it was exactly the same person doing exactly the same thing in those two circumstances, up to that point, the context is entirely different. And you can't criticize, no, you can't judge one perspective from another perspective. So how can we draw from that morals?
Well, this is the postmodern problem. Just walks headfirst into it. How can you judge another culture? You're only doing that from inside your culture. And the traditionalist, which I suppose is the only, or the reactionist view, whatever you want to call them, the people who disagree with this, answer is, I don't know, but I'm inside my perspective, so therefore I will judge them.
But there's also something about that seems valid. Like, you can't judge.
Well, that accepts the game. That's interesting. It's almost like assuming that they're actually telling the truth, which is a hell of an assumption given that they don't believe in it. And are not just using this as an attempt to create their own meme and culture and then gain power for themselves. It's like they reject the idea entirely. You are from your culture, they are from their culture. You cannot understand their perspective, they cannot understand yours. Obviously, you can understand some, but they don't want to talk about where there's overlap, they want to talk about where there's difference. Because of that, you judging their culture is unacceptable. And it should be inverse, that they're judging your culture is unacceptable, but they don't believe in that. The West cannot judge anyone, but everyone can judge the West, which exposes that they don't actually give a shit about their philosophy. They give a shit about acquiring power, and they believe that the way to do that is to flip and destroy the West and take control of whatever's left, communist style. Assuming we take their ideas seriously, it's a rejection of reality. Like when we talked about social hierarchies and the people who are so uncomfortable with losing that they'd rather not their be an existence of social hierarchies.
Mm.
But the problem is, there is. There is a reality. Our interpretations may be varying and distinct, but that doesn't mean that there isn't a base reality that we're in. We may have a warped view because of our moral framework that guides our actions and our decision making, the memes in our mind. But it's still a world that we walk through. Yes, we shape it this way or that way based on our culture, and so does every other culture.
Oh,
But they're going to compete, and whatever will happen as a result of the competition is whatever's going to happen.
in
So,
a cultural view that has lasted long enough to become established has done that in the face of reality and therefore has some sort of positive correlation to base reality or whatever other layers we're working on. So there is value there. And other systems also have that. Where two systems disagree, we don't know, if we take a step out, which one has the closer view of base reality, and then or the more cohesive pattern of interaction. But then the circumstances differ. Like
this is the history of religion. It never ended. Different gods and different groups competing to explain how existence is. Living and fighting and dying and acting out their truth. And coming together and splitting apart and learning and discussing all the time.
yeah, there's a value in this process. I think that's
Yeah, we're going somewhere.
The argument is not pointless.
No. But for a single human being, it's futile, almost. Well,
Yeah.
this comes back to the problem that we had before, is that when you try to look at things on evolutionary timescales, you immediately come to the conclusion of, oh, I'm not changing anything. This is the way that things are. And while that is fascinating, I don't know exactly how things came to be, and I don't know exactly how they're going to end out. I never will know. I will almost never affect that. And at a certain point, you just have to go, oh, well, in that case, I'll just live my life.
I'm getting the feeling like it doesn't matter which path you follow, which cause you champion, which guiding light you follow to lead you somewhere, but it's the fact that you're doing that. The act itself is where the value comes from. It's not about one being more right than the other.
It's collectively gathering more data for the collective subconscious.
Yes, in one sense, but that doesn't quite feel like it, and that might just be a perspective thing. Like the mindset I'm looking at it from at the moment. It's like I love the analogy of a dance. Like where if someone's just sitting still at the middle of a dance floor, right? They're not doing anything, right?
Yeah, they're not helping.
Yeah, but someone utterly who's dancing their own utterly unique way that everyone else thinks is weird. Like, what the hell are they doing? They're doing something. And that makes ripples. And then someone takes a piece of that crazy thing they did and it makes the dance of life richer. Even if on its own it was too weird to link into anything else. It's like it's not about
it's good faith to have.
Yeah, it's not about trying to find the perfect path. Because like if you have a dance floor filled with dancers, which dancer is doing the perfect dance if you take away the rules of dance? So you don't care if it's country line dancing or ballroom or whatever. It's like who's the best dancer? It's like there's no standard to judge by, but it's richer the more varied and cohesive it is. It's not just richer by sheer diversity of chaos. It's not richer by uniformity. It's richer by the layered patterning of interaction. It's
Yeah.
life.
The
It's
decentralized nature of our interactions.
oh
Yeah, I feel like sometimes I think I'm really stupid, and I'm glad that I have moments like this because I also realize I'm not. We've been talking about this topic for 10 minutes or so, and
mm,
it's like, oh, all central planning idea is a really bad idea. Like,
mm,
just immediately, no, this is not how this thing is working. It's bottom up emergent phenomenon. Wherever we're going to end up is going to be a distributed realization, like a religious one.
mm.
It's going to be a meme that emerges. It's not going to be some person who thinks they have a mind that can compute better than the 7 billion that are currently on the planet and everyone who had ever existed before them.
Mm.
I think, yeah, I think what we've just stumbled upon is that all human beings' minds for the entire time that we have been human beings are trying to answer this question of what is this and what are we doing? And we don't have the answer. And we won't have the answer for probably a long time, as
Long enough
evidenced by the chaos of our world, because
long
we're
enough
still
that
in the computation phase.
yeah,
Compute
yeah.
phase.
It's like it's the
Which means
answer is beyond
that
the
your one
horizon.
single mind is not smart enough
Yeah.
to come up with my perfect plan that if I
Mm,
only had all the power, I would save existence and make me president of Earth or whatever.
mm. But
No.
we've also each got we see a spark, right? We don't
Yes.
see the ultimate light, but we see a glimmer of a spark. And
We all have
something that
something that's purely unique.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
If
it's like
only we expressed it.
it's I think freeing to say, I'm going to go and screw this up. Not in a fatalistic, I'll never get it right sense, but in a sense of I am fundamentally incapable of living perfectly.
Mm, that's interesting.
I will screw it up. But
We all want to
in,
be right in the West, but
yeah,
we can't be. Functionally,
we,
it's impossible to be correct about anything
we don't want to,
given this statement we've gone through.
yeah, it's failure phobia.
Yeah. Yeah, we find it unacceptable to stand in public and be wrong. Was that the cardinal sin of having been wrong on the internet? Like, hold on. That's antithetical to the idea. Oh shit. That is antithetical to the idea that truth is found in the redemptive word, or redemption is found in the truthful word.
Hang on a minute.
That's
True,
antithetical to the Christian ethos. That going out
true,
into the world and saying what you have to say will make things better. And instead, we're
even,
so afraid of that we sit in
mm,
silence. And the silence is permission for totalitarian takeover.
even though those truthful words, your own truth, will be a failure by the ultimate measure. It's like,
Yeah. Yeah, you're still wrong.
yeah,
But the
but
mere fact that you stood up and said something meant that there was one more voice on the side of somewhat reasonable and away from the side of tyrannical evil.
heroic failure is
is the sacrifice that keeps the tyrants at bay.
Yeah, I'm trying to say something like is better than mere lack of attempts. Like to fail heroically is a success. To like you
Well,
only fail when sorry,
silence is complying.
you only fail when you give up.
Doing nothing is a choice. You're still speaking your truth to the world. Your truth is that I don't have anything important to say. I don't have anything to say. Or what's
Oh,
being said by everyone else is the right thing. You're
it,
still making a choice and action in the world.
your
This
voice
was
comes out no
something
matter
I
what
was.
you say.
Sorry?
Yeah, your voice comes out
Yeah.
no matter what you say.
Yes. Yes. You do not have the option to not play.
Mm.
The game, yeah. Yeah. Life is a game and the stakes are life and death, and you don't have a choice but to sit down and play. And if you think you're abstaining, you're not. You're walking down a path that you don't understand. You should look into what happens when everyone stays silent. It's not good. And that's just the path that you're choosing.
It feels more fundamental than that. It's like you're in this game.
Mm.
Will you engage with life? Will you live or will you not live? Like nothingness, like there's like cosmic horror, which they tried to. It's very hard to describe, but like the ways I've sort of glimpsed it, it's like parallel lines converging to infinity, and you try and go there in your head, and it's like unending, like the scream in the distance that fades off to silence, but you still know it's there. It's just an unending
Mm.
scream of infinite, right? That's infinite and nothingness. It's like a go around like Ouroboros. It's like there's you dive down into nihilism, and it's like nothingness becomes overwhelming. Nothingness is infinite, or at least
It's
it's
pressuring.
beyond. Yeah, yeah, yeah. The
Yeah,
weight
we're
of
beings of
nothingness.
limitation.
Yeah, but if you engage, if you act and live, if you hang on it, nothingness is infinite, but if you have a something in the nothingness that is finite and like
Grounding.
you, it brings you into existence. By
Yeah.
your actions, you bring yourself into existence. Like people who
Yep.
are merely existing, who aren't living, who aren't acting, they don't feel like they are much of a person because they're not. They aren't speaking themselves or acting themselves into existence.
Adrenaline is the thing my mind goes to. We talked about those times when I felt completely dialed in to life.
Mm.
And that was when I was risking everything to reach someone who would normally not be reachable. Which was doing that and
Oh,
poking apart their assumptions using things that they have not come across and may be socially unacceptable. Not always. But there's meaningful I found the most meaning in there is that I was changing people's personalities. I was going to a core belief that they held, and I was hacking it to pieces. And I was showing them, hey, you've got holes in your armor here. And the discomfort you feel from not being able to answer these questions or defend yourself from my questions is proof of that. For whatever reason, that seemed to tickle it for me. But my point is that there is a marker that you feel when you act yourself into existence in the greatest way that you can in that moment.
Mm.
The Buddhists, I think, talk about it quite a lot, but there's a sense that you get where you are completely in tune. Like right now in this moment, I am here and it is me, and there is 100% of me here.
Mm. And I think you can't, possibly in higher levels of spiritual practice, but even then I have my doubts, but you can't be that in isolation on your own. It is
Yeah.
an interface, an interaction, and I think like in a romantic relationship, like you get the surge at the start of interacting with a new person and acting yourself into existence by interaction with another.
Mm.
And then that process is often lost in relationships. I think because people think, okay, achievement ticked off, move on to the
Yeah.
next one. But no, it's
But they stop paying attention to the moment.
mm,
In my experience, these things only ever happen when you are 100% focused in the moment.
mm,
And my subjective experience is the um, the idea of a higher version of myself in a different dimension that's the real me is able to manifest himself in me more fully in those moments, in
mm.
the gap between the words where I don't know what's coming next. And only in the most serious moments, only when I'm paying the most attention. Like
And
I'll notice
risking the
this if
most.
yes, if I'm at work and I'm listening to something and someone talks to me, like I'll often stutter in response. I'm not engaged super well in that moment. But when I'm having a conversation with my wife and it's about something that's really important to me and like the stakes are like a massive fight or the marriage, which has happened, or it feels like that's the stakes, but I have some more faith in that. I'm able to pull out like feats of mental and linguistic ability that I didn't believe I had. And I don't think that I could just manifest them when I want to. Like part of me knows what I need to say, but I at the same time don't know the next word that's coming out of my mouth. Feels like channeling almost.
Yeah, I feel like it's not so much that you are producing that. It's not like you are handling this interaction here with this other person. It's the intuitive feel I get is that it's the interaction itself that's producing that. That it's not just you. It's you and your wife together that bring that forth. Like if it was
Yeah, I
no matter
couldn't
what
do
the
that
state they are.
staring at a wall.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, it's
the meaning of the moment, the inflection point. Oh, it's an inflection point between realities. Huh, that's interesting.
your reality and your wife's reality, or whoever you're discussing with at the time.
No, I mean existence.
As in layers of existence or non-existence?
Choices define reality. Not just your reality, but reality.
As in the more significant
Like,
the actions, the more
yeah, yeah, I have a cup.
force. Mm,
Do I put it here or do I put it here?
mm,
I put it here. This is now the world where I put it there. It's not the one where I put it there. That's not a huge difference. Maybe that doesn't matter. but maybe I move my arm in a certain way and it knocks a coffee cup down and it breaks something. Whereas if it was over there, it wouldn't. Small things. But you can have inflection points where things could change. Massive things, like the direction of a marriage. Whether you fall apart or you don't. These are moments where everything hangs in the balance.
There's a skill to handling those moments.
Yeah, I've had a few, and knock on wood, I've managed to come out ahead so far. And those are the moments that I was talking about. In those moments, I feel so much more than I am.
You can't hide in those moments. If you hide, it doesn't work.
No, it's not that. I don't feel hiding. I feel I wish I could manifest it all the time.
I'm
I would
not
like
saying
to,
I'm not saying
but
that I
I feel
think you're
like
hiding in those moments. I'm thinking that hiding is what would not work. Like if you try and hide from that moment, if you try and put up
yes,
some premeditated pattern, if you
to not engage,
you're not
as you were
engaged
saying
in the
before.
moment.
Yeah, to not engage with reality, you lose yourself.
But if you do engage in those moments, basically no matter what the outcome, you have lived. You lived that moment and you are more for it.
Yes, and I would interject, seeing as we are Westerners, that the argument of our Christian Western heritage is that in those moments, as long as you hold to the truth, your truth, and not be deceptive, that things will work out as they should.
Mm.
It's worked for me so far. And in a way, I think it's worked for you too.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
With your previous relationship.
Yeah. I think that not saying what needed to be said was what
Was the
made
problem.
that was the problem.
Yeah. And then you did. And you almost saw change immediately, but it was too late. From what you said. See, it's interesting. I want to go back to what we were saying before because my mind immediately went to the 4-dimension thing. Well, my subjective experience is that day-to-day life I'm bumbling about and I'm me. And I just feel normal. And then in moments like those, I've had several of them. I did have one where I was on my own. It was the spiritual. They feel spiritual. That's the sense I get. This is a spiritual moment. And my felt sense of that is all of a sudden I am way more of me than I normally am. Like large is not the right word. Grander, maybe.
Active, as opposed to being inactive and just going through the motions.
Maybe. I still feel pretty active most day to day. But I feel like, I want to say the word manifest, but it feels a little bit too much like it's under my control. But in those moments, I feel carried with something, and I feel greater than I am normally. And they're in the most important inflection moments of my life, some of them, or someone else's perhaps. Now that I think about it, because there's a couple with other people that I remember significantly, but they didn't really change me. I never saw those people again though, so I don't know what happened to them. I'm going to go somewhere weird with this. I wonder, this is my experience of spirituality, whether this is the higher dimensional interaction. So we have our 3 dimensions,
Mm-hmm.
and they're space-time dimensions. But we perceive time as traveling forward, unidimensional.
Mm-hmm.
We cannot go back in time, nor can we go sideways in time, nor vertical in time. And I don't know what that would even mean. But my point is that we have effectively 3 spatial dimensions in one time. And yes, I know space-time interacts. I understand that well, but for the point of this, I wonder if, like the 3D objects going through Flatland, that there are touchstone points in a higher dimension where time is a spatial direction that can be moved,
Well,
whether in 2 or 3.
that would imply the word, or be described by the word eternal, as I understand it. Because that doesn't mean lasting forever, that means beyond time itself.
Beyond time.
Hmm.
Well, not necessarily
Well,
beyond, but not
outside,
bound by.
yeah, like able to look at birth and death simultaneously, birth and death of the same person, and see the the journey, or possibly the web of potential choices radiating out.
To be able to step would be the
Hmm.
analogy. To your left is your casket, and to your right is your cot. And I know I looked right and left, but dyslexia. My momentary hypothesis is that the higher beings that humanity has referenced throughout our history, and also referenced as part of us and not, find these touchstone points that change the course of our reality and influence them with their presence. Our presence? Interesting. If you had a flatland map and there was a character in the middle going about his character thing, and you in 3D space looked at that character and spoke to him, the character would perceive your voice as echoing from within himself.
Hmm. Or an apparently sourceless point.
Yes, but the point would be
Hmm.
sourced on him.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's where you're directing it in 3D space, but they don't have a perception of 3D space.
Hmm.
And it would feel like it was radiating out from them.
Hmm.
Similar feeling analogy in 3D space. But what is interesting is that in those moments, I feel more powerful, for sure, but there's no aggression in it, which is interesting. It's like a
Agency?
benevolent love, kind of. What was that?
Agency rather than power?
Perhaps, but it's wrapped up in a feeling of love. It
Hmm.
always has been. A love of humanity is the overwhelming feeling I get. It reminds me of what the Buddhists and the Dalai Lama used to talk about. I always wanted to be one when I was a kid.
Hmm.
I
Those
was
sort of
annoyed that there was a
experiences,
Dalai Lama because I wanted to be him. What was that, sorry?
those sort of experiences of like universal love are rare on an individual scale, but common on a population scale. Like that sort of semi-shamanic experience of encountering the universe as love, or something like that. Like
Mm.
those sort of experiences seem to be common enough to be foundational.
Interesting.
Like they're glimpses, or they seem to be glimpses into the nature of reality that we're trying to align our lives to. And I think that work or effort reaching towards that ultimate truth brings you closer to it. You can't reach it, but my sense is that as you try and reach towards it, deliberately very vague, your efforts are reflected back at you. Like you reach out and something reaches back, it feels like.
Yeah.
You're not just left to struggle on your own.
My brain's taking me to the sort of astral energy meditation crap that I was raised
Mm,
with. I feel a connection to there because I've used that stuff in the past as an attempt to sort of force. There's a similar feeling there, like the body is flowing with energy.
mm,
And they have that thing where you align yourself, you build up your charge or whatever, and then you open a door to bring in energy from somewhere else above you.
mm.
And my perception is that I've felt things flow in. I understand how that sounds to a modern mind, but
It sounds
you
every
know,
day to me.
yeah. See, for you and I,
Yeah.
because we're people who experimented with it and came to direct experience.
Mm,
And many people will look at people and go, "Oh, you're sort of like a crackpot hippie talking about the love,
yeah.
man, and the spiritual energy."
Oh, there was a video I saw where a guy he was talking to a kung fu master who for years had poo-pooed any cheese sort of stuff, and then he discovered that it was actually useful in terms of like in a practical sense of by using your chi right, you could punch harder or resist or block more effectively.
Hmm,
And
interesting.
he demonstrated some things about it, like the guy said, "What's an exercise people could try at home in order to feel it for themselves?" Okay, do this thing, da 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 da. And then the guy doing the presentation, like, "Well, what the frack? I feel something." And it's like, from my perspective, like, "Oh yeah, yeah, you did it. Well done."
Interesting. I might have to look into that one.
I think I
I was
saved the
just gonna
video for
say,
future reference.
cool. Well, you send it to me.
Yeah,
I was just gonna say before we went on off on that because that's like a third party source. Neither of us really know that one.
yeah.
I feel like most often people roll their eyes at this kind of stuff, but I also have a sense that perhaps they won't with you and me
Mm,
because we don't speak as hippie characters.
mm,
Both of us, I think, can be incredibly analytical in nature, and we have this cadence to thought and speech that's very reasoned and approached. And then we just jump straight into, I had this spiritual experience and I'm feeling things from the fourth dimension or whatever.
yeah,
And
I
I
find that
felt
to be
energy, and
yeah, yeah. It's like
these things are true.
yeah,
And it's often
actions
why I
were
don't talk
taken.
about it.
Yeah, actions were taken, results were experienced.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have life. I've had a life and I've
Mm.
experienced certain things and they've opened me to possibilities. What I'm wondering is to what degree we are just the three-dimensional component of our four-dimensional being. Because we experience time on one dimension. We have a understanding-ish of two dimensions. So that would be choice, what we call choice. But then it's difficult for us to make the right choices at the right time. And we do not have free motion within that plane.
A lot of our choices are almost pre-made by our preconceptions.
Yes. And on the occasions where you are able to manifest yourself fully, things are in flux and may change. And I am wondering if there is a higher version of ourselves that only a small piece can be brought through into this form to interact with this plane. Like meshed on top of each other, effectively. A four-dimensional being of us that is in us and around us and in the four-dimensional world simultaneously. But we being in the three-dimensional world can't perceive that. And if that part of us is not bound by time and not bound by space and able to interact wherever and whenever. Like just think about the idea of the light within. That we are beings of light and it's within our skin and within our soul, and we have the connection point that we're able to open and close depending on energy states or substance use, to loosen or drop the bonds of our part of this being. It's so difficult to talk about this because it's beyond our scope of understanding. Well, I don't think our brains have the right tools. These are three-dimensional meat sacks. And I feel like these are three-dimensional meat sacks by which our four-dimensional being is manifesting itself within this existence.
Well, the way
so only how much of us is able to come through at any moment is able to come through.
Yeah, I conceive of it like there's the certain postmodernists describe us as meat robots. I think there's an element of truth to that in the sense of the neural network of the brain is obviously doing a lot of stuff and so on. But I think of it like
meat robots with a puppet.
Yeah, with the puppet master, so to speak.
Yeah.
Where that puppet master is the real you could say. Like driving
That's
a
what I
drone with some sort of AI navigation thing.
I identify with the puppet master version of me. So that's what I mean when I say I feel the most me in those moments where I'm fully manifest. And the rest of the time I'm like kind of me, but kind of like an animal version of me. I feel like that's me most of the time. I'm just going about my daily thing. Oh, God, we have to go to work, and this coffee's nice, and I'm hungry. And then every now and then I feel like, oh, I showed up and I did something and it had an effect in the world.
Yeah,
and I feel
being
it plenty in
present.
these conversations, which is why I like them.
I think it's where the term woke sort of came from, like being awake. It feels like you're actually awake, but then that was taken off somewhere else.
That 70s movement of the New Age people, which I think started off well and went off the rails pretty quick.
It's getting late.
Yeah, it is. I'm still drinking coffee.
Yeah, I think we're.
I was going to say I don't have work in the morning, but actually I have to drive to the hospital for surgery. So actually, I do have an early morning. I'm just going to behave if I don't. That'll help.
Oh, yes. I feel like we're running out of steam, but I think this has been a good conversation.
That's a problem for future Hamish.
Yeah, really don't hate me that guy.
Yeah, boy, I hate to be him. But that's all right. He can wake up tomorrow and deal with it. I'll die tonight when I go to sleep. There's a part of me that believes that, which is interesting.
Okay.
Consciousness being a part of that fourth dimension. We never really touched on the aliens topic, did we? We had that joke about it, and then we went into the alcohol thing that one time. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you want to wrap down?
Oh.
Stop for the night.
Yeah, let me try and sum up.
I got more.
Live. Don't just exist. Don't just fade. Live. Live and fail and burn brightly.
Mm. It's that poem about rage against the dying of the light.
Yeah. But it's not a rage.
No,
There's something similar to it in there, but it's a
bright light, burn with
I will
love,
burn out. Sorry?
radiate.
Yeah. I would rather my light shine forth brightly
Mm.
in
I am the light.
I would rather it shine forth brightly in failure than never be
I,
revealed.
I'm the light of the world. Be the light. Radiate. Be radiant. Manifest yourself as great as you possibly can, in as many moments as you possibly can. Do so out of love for humanity, and trust that the outcome is the outcome that should be.
Even if you fail in the task you're attempting, you'll succeed in shining the light. Fail heroically. How's that for a goal?
That's a bloody good way to say goodnight.
Yeah. Good night.
Love it. I
Gosh.
just feel so excited now. I feel all hopeful. Feel great. Bye, everybody.
Yeah.